All right. So this training specifically I created for Sequel Care of Florida to help with your PANDA admissions pre-go live data entry for your clients. So I'm going to start basically from the beginning of where you guys would start. We're going to go through the completing of the intake, adding medical insurance, adding client contacts, entering current medications into the medication reconciliation list builder, entering preferred pharmacy, and then medication allergies and non-medication allergies. I did note some of these things are really truly required and need to be in PANDA. Some of these things are more recommendations and optional. I guess one thing to keep in mind is whatever we don't enter in advance to go live is going to have to be entered either at go live or the physician may have to enter it. So I think if we can cover these bases, even though it's going to seem like a lot of information, if we can get this process going in advance, I think your guys' go live is going to go smoother. So that is definitely the purpose of this training. So let me log in here. As you guys know, you just use your SQL email and password to get logged in. And the first thing I'm going to walk through is creating an intake. Let me get my screen size up a little bit here. So you'll go to admissions, you'll go to intake. For those sites that have been using the PANDA pipeline, you can just search for an accepted referral, choose that referral, and then it will allow you to go to that intake screen. It will have several fields filled in, the first name, last name, date of birth, the state the patient is in, and the sex or gender of the patient. I'm just going to start from the beginning. I know some of the sites that aren't necessarily using the pipeline or just have recently got trained on the pipeline. So for that situation, if you guys aren't using the pipeline yet, don't feel like you got to all of a sudden start using the pipeline right now when you're trying to get prepared for go live. We're definitely encouraging sites to start using that. But with you guys having so many clients that you guys see, I think it's best to just focus on this intake process and getting everybody prepped for go live prior to embarking on the pipeline at this exact moment. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new test patient here. Select my location. So the locations visible should be the ones that you are actually assigned to. One thing to note here, there was an error made, and this was made a while back when we first entered these locations, that there is a Newport Richey and there is a Pasco. It's come to my attention that they're the exact same thing. So please, I have requested for them to remove the Newport Richey since it seems like you guys do go by Pasco even though the location is in Newport. So please, when you guys are entering your clients, choose Pasco because I have requested for this to be removed. It's just a matter of how quickly they can get that done for us. I'm going to select Vero Beach for this round. I'm going to hit create a new client. So that first screen where you're entering in the first name, last name, and the date of birth, the system is going to search to make sure there's no duplicates. So that is why we kind of separated that area out. We did have some issues with duplicates when Woodward went live. So that should catch any duplicate and it'll warn you and say, hey, wait a minute, there's somebody with that name and date of birth already in the system. So with regards to this screen, you want to enter in the required fields. I think it's best to just tab through this dorm field. I know this was specifically for the residential site, so I just added outpatient clinic to that. That's the only option that's going to be available for all the Sequel Care Florida sites. With regards to date of admission, when you click on the date of admission, it's going to default to today's date and time. You can easily change this by using the calendar. If a client has been with you guys for a long period of time, if you click on the month and year, it will bring you to additional years back and forth. So if you guys need to change the date, also the time clock is here at the bottom if you need to change the time of the intake. Birthday already completed. Again, I'm just going to tab through. I recommend that you guys only focus on the fields that are required unless there is something really important that you guys need in the system that's not noted as required right now. You want to make sure you're completing all required fields, otherwise the system will give you an alert if you try to save. You guys will be community-based. There are a few fields that were required for certification and for meaningful use purposes. Preferred language, which we do have defaulting to English, but that can be changed if needed. Definitely need to designate the sex of the patient. Please do not use that. I actually requested to have the unknown or not applicable removed, because the e-prescribing system will not launch correctly if we do not designate the gender. So please make sure that you are designating male or female gender for the client. Ethnicity, that was one that was required for meaningful use, and also the race. So those are all the fields that are required for the initial intake process. I'm going to go ahead and save this information. The system on that screen is going to search to make sure you have a valid phone number. So if for some reason you got a weird area code or something is not matching up, the system is set up to search and make sure that the phone number is valid. That was required for certification. All right, now that I've completed the intake, just real briefly, you notice that it's going to take me to the demographics screen. If I realize I made a mistake in the intake process, I can easily edit any of these fields just by clicking on the field. If I need to change the first name or last name or anything, I just click. Let's add eye color for this one. Then I would hit that checkbox to save that information. So I know we covered that in admissions training. I just want to make sure everybody's clear on that. And to find client demographics, you always go to client and then demographics here. So any information from intake is going to pull immediately into that demographic screen that can be edited at any time. Next thing I'm going to do after I complete my intake, I'm going to enter medical insurance. For those of you that may have been in here recently, some of you, I think it was actually Florida that requested that we add this, which I thought was a great idea. So first you want to add the guarantor, but we now have a copy from client button. So hopefully that's going to alleviate some of the data entry process for you guys. If I hit that copy from client, it's going to ask me, are you sure you want to continue? Yes, I do. And now if I look at my guarantor, I'm going to have all information that's pulled from that intake into the guarantor screen. And even if you have a pediatric client and the parent is the guarantor, a lot of times you could still use that copy from client. Maybe you're just going to change the first name and last name because they live at the same address. Company name is going to default to not applicable. This is not required to be sent to the lab for the billing process, so that's totally fine if that's NA. And then self will always be the default for the contact type. Hopefully that's going to save you guys some time. Once I've entered in my guarantor, I need to enter the actual medical insurance into the system by hitting that green plus sign. And again, we have the copy from guarantor and copy from client. In this situation, it seems redundant because the guarantor is the client, which we copied from the client, but there are going to be situations that come up that would be different. So please be aware of that. I am going to go ahead and use that button just so I don't have to enter in all those fields. But just make sure you're filling in all the required fields. This bottom section is actual insurance information. If you click in this field, I'm just going to go ahead and type in Medicaid. One thing to note, and I know Art brought this to my attention previously, is that there were some insurances that were not found in PANDA. So if you guys run into a situation where you're like, man, I cannot find this insurance, please let me know. Just shoot me an email and let me know that we need something added, because we are able to add anything that we need to this drop down. This is supposed to be a complete list of all insurances in the United States, but the fact that we've run into some that aren't in here, obviously this is not a complete list. If I type in Medicaid, scroll down, I could find Medicaid Florida. Subscriber ID would be the Medicaid ID. Group number is optional. If you do have a group number on the insurance card, then please put that in because that will be sent to the lab. But if for whatever reason there is no group number, that's not a required field. Relationship, we'll choose self, and then the primary insurance, make sure you are designating if it is the primary insurance. If you have multiple insurances, you would go through this process again and you would add the next insurance as the secondary insurance and so on and so forth. The primary insurance is the one that's sent directly to the lab for those of you that do labs at your site. So I've entered all my medical insurance information. I've entered my guarantor, the insurance holder, and the actual insurance provider information. So now I'm done with medical insurance. Next section, number 3, is on adding client contacts. After some conversation that I did have with Sequel Care of Florida, it doesn't sound like you guys always collect client contacts, which is totally fine. Just continue with your current process. I do think it's a good idea to have an emergency contact on file. If you guys want to move in that direction, it's totally up to you. The recommendation is to add the emergency contact and legal guardian contact for any pediatric patients we may have. So to add a contact, I hit that green plus sign. I'm just going to go ahead and create a new contact. That searching contacts will likely be used more when you're focused on adding social workers or referring workers. So these were required previously, but that has been removed, so that has been updated. All that's required in this field is the first name and last name. So I'll enter my first name and last name. I'm going to go ahead and enter a phone number for this contact, and I'm going to designate them as the emergency contact. So adding the contacts is done. Number 4, adding current medications to the medication reconciliation list builder. So this is something that I have not covered in any other training, and it is a really, really critical piece if we're going to be successful with meaningful use. It sounds like currently in Florida, the providers don't necessarily have a really strict process that they follow for medication reconciliation. So this is going to get them in a position where they're going to have a standard process, but it is really important that you guys get these medications entered in for them so they're not having to spend significant time entering meds. So with regards to medication reconciliation, basically what we're doing is we're entering in the current medications of the client, and then the doctor is going to review them, and he's going to make the final decision on what he wants on the client's active medication list in PANDA. So you're going to find this under Health and Medication Reconciliation. So this is the medication reconciliation section. It was initially called clinical reconciliation because we were required for certification to be able to reconcile problems and medication allergies along with medications. Meaningful use only requires medications, so we're only going to focus on that. So your role when you're doing the intake process would be to come in here. I'm going to hit this green plus sign. I'm going to designate the provider that I'm working with, so this would be a whole list of providers at your site are going to appear in this drop-down. Reconciliation type for this is always going to be medication, and then the source. The source could be paper chart, the source could be the patient, the source could be Dr. Smith. Any of those would work as the source. This is going to be visible to the provider when they perform their medication reconciliation. So if it's just from the paper chart, document that, or if the patient is saying, hey, you know, I'm taking this other medication, you can document that. So I'm just going to do it as patient reported. Here I'm going to search for my medication. You need to type in the first 3 letters. So the more you type in, the shorter your list is going to be. So if you want to type in Zoloft, the whole entire word, you're going to get a shorter list to choose from. I'm going to select the Zoloft. I'm going to select the strength. The rest of these fields are not necessarily required. I think it's a great idea to identify the date prescribed. I think that is a pretty critical piece of information for a provider to know when they're looking at a medication. If you don't know it though, it's okay not to put it in there. Also patient directions, if you know I'm taking it once daily, you can document that in here also. But like I said, none of these fields are necessarily required. The more information you can put in, I think the better it is for the provider, but it's totally up to what information you have available in the paper chart. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. So that process I just completed, if there is 10 medications, I'm sorry to tell you, you need to do that process 10 times. With us doing this for the providers, it's really going to encourage them to do their medication reconciliation because the difficult part of the medication entry is already done. And one advantage to this is that medications that they choose to reconcile will then appear on the active med list in PANDA, and they can just click an order button and reorder that medication for the patient. So it really is going to streamline the medication process for the provider if we can get everybody on board and doing this ahead of time in preparation for go live. If you guys got questions, please write them down and I'll cover all of them at the end so we don't get disrupted with the recording. Next, I'm going to go to entering preferred pharmacy. Preferred pharmacy is found under e-prescribing. As I was going through this, I wish there was a way to have all of these pieces in one simple location, but there just is not. With the e-prescribing functionality, we are contracted with a third-party vendor called DoseSpot. We don't have any ability to change the screen. We know we researched a lot of different e-prescribing vendors, and they by far had the most clean-cut, easy-to-use e-prescribing format. So with this, with entering a preferred pharmacy, when you come in here, it's going to show you the name of the patient, and here at the bottom it's going to say patient preferred pharmacy. To add one, I'm just going to click on the add preferred pharmacy, and I'm going to search for the name of the pharmacy. Since I'm in the test environment, it's not going to give me a whole lot of valid options. I recommend that you put in as much information as you can. I know I talked to Sequel Care of Arizona recently, and they had just put in the phone number and it immediately found the pharmacy. So based on whatever information you have, at a minimum, I would put in the name and the state. Otherwise, you're going to get a really large list of pharmacies that are going to come back. So enter in the information, hit search, and then the list of pharmacies is going to appear. Once it's highlighted in pink, if you click on it, that saves the pharmacy, and now it's appearing over here as a patient's preferred pharmacy. If the patient has more than one preferred pharmacy, which I know is common in some practices, you can, again, search for the pharmacy and then select a second pharmacy that you want to add. All right, the next section is on medication allergies. Medication allergies is entered in through this exact same screen, so you definitely want to do it in this order so you're not having to go back and forth. You'll notice this section here right under the demographic information called drug allergies. If I click on the orange hyperlink, it's going to allow me to add drug allergies. If the patient doesn't have any drug allergies, I think it's still a good practice to document no known allergies so that the system knows that there's no allergies to worry about, and so the doctor knows that there's no allergies to be concerned about. If I want to add a drug allergy, I just hit this orange Add Drug Allergy button. I'm going to search for the allergy. Let's say this patient is allergic to Tylenol. And I'm going to select whatever is most appropriate from this drop-down. You definitely want to make sure when you are adding the allergy that you're selecting from the drop-down. If you type in a whole word and the system doesn't recognize it and you select it, the system will not be able to perform the drug interaction and drug allergy checks appropriately. So it is really important that you make sure, like if I needed to, just decrease the letters and get a list so that I'm choosing from the list. If you know the reaction, you can enter that, but it's not required. I'm going to go ahead and hit add and add that allergy. If I have another drug allergy, I'd go through that same process and add another medication allergy to this section of PANDA. All right, last but not least is non-medication allergies. So within PANDA, we have allergies that live in actually two separate locations. Because the drug interaction checks with allergies has to be done inside the e-prescribing screen, drug allergies has to live in this section of PANDA. Non-medication allergies are going to be found here under the allergies menu, non-medication. If I want to add an allergy that's a non-drug allergy, well, first off, we did add this functionality recently. If the medication or if the allergies have not been reviewed, it will automatically default to not yet reviewed. If the patient has no known allergies, you would just select no known allergies and hit that checkbox. Don't worry about selecting there are known allergies. Once you add an allergy to the system, it will automatically default to there are known allergies. So to add an allergy, I'm going to click on that green plus sign. The EMR certification for allergies required us to have like 6,000 allergies in the system, and some of the allergies I honestly don't even know if they're in English. It doesn't even look like English to me. We have created a sub-list of those 6,000. These were the most commonly reported allergies within Sequel, within the 3 or 4 sites that we worked with to try to gather this list initially. So hopefully you'll be able to select from this site this list. If you find that you are constantly searching for a specific allergy that's not on this initial sub list, please email me that allergy and I will get it added to the sub list, because there is, if I type in Z, this is what I'm going to get. This is the list of allergies as required for certification, which I just feel like is mumbo jumbo. So hopefully you can select from the list. Again, if you need me to add them, I can easily add them. It takes just a couple minutes. So let's say this patient is allergic to almonds. I would search for my reaction. I'll just say hives, since that's a pretty common reaction to allergies. So I have to add the allergy and I have to add the reaction, and those fields are required. The date the allergy was diagnosed is also required. If you don't know the date, just put the date of entry. I don't think it's going to be a huge concern, but a date is required. And a lot of the system requirements are due to either certification or the creation of the summary of care record, which PANDA is required to be able to create and send to other providers. So some of these fields I had asked to not be required, and I ran into some resistance due to certification, and that's just how it is. These fields on the bottom are not required, so do not feel like you need to fill in the severity or the type or any sort of reaction notes. So in this screen, it's basically the allergy, the reaction, and the date it was diagnosed, which you can default to today's date if that's all you got. All right, let me scroll down, make sure I haven't missed anything. Okay. Let me stop